I'm Tom Sussman, the Strategy Director at adam&eveDDB. And you are?
I'm Cheryl Calverley. I am the commercial brains behind the operation, otherwise known as the Marketing Director at the AA.
Yeah, so I'm the specky, nerdy advertising person, and Cheryl is my thrusting, ambitious client. And that kind of works for us as a relationship. I think what also works is that we believe the same sort of advertising pays back. And it's that same sort of advertising that we've sort of dedicated our careers to making. And that is, in 2 words, or 3, big and famous. We are full believers in the whole Byron Sharp, Les Binet, mass reach school of advertising. And that means in 2018, TV as well. So listening to everything we just heard about addressable and targeting and contextual all makes perfect sense and is great to hear. But it doesn't change the fact that standard linear TV still is the biggest game to be a part of if you want mass reach, famous advertising. And we believe that. And the reason we believe that is we have evidence to suggest it promotes something very important to us, which is long-term brand building. And we believe that has the biggest impact on profit, penetration, price, compared to any other sort of advertising. The problem is, if we had one bone to pick, I think, with Messrs. Burnett and Field or Byron Sharp or any of those good people, is that this is all brilliant in theory, and I'm sure you've heard other people talk about it, probably more eloquently, in theory. In practice, it's really bloody hard to pull off. And yeah, so, and this is sort of how it feels, right?
It is. I mean, I sit on the client side or the advertiser side, as it's described in here today. Can I just get a sense of in the room, how many clients or advertisers have I got? Stick your hands up if you're clients or advertisers, or indeed just buying media to drive your business forward in any way, shape or form. About 20-30% of people, I think. So it's interesting. So, we talk about long-term, we talk about the big famous effects, we talk about, ROI over the 3 to 5 year horizon, which is all great. And then if you're anything like me, your board says, well, fabulous, but what about February's numbers? Because we're in December and February's looking really hairy and really scary. And can't we just turn up some of that, some of that programmatic that we've got guaranteed paybacks next week, next month? And that's where the challenge lies.
Yeah, that's the biggest challenge or the biggest argument facing agencies and also advertisers is this idea of how do you make the best and reap all the rewards of long-term brand building through mass reach advertising, but still enjoy commercial success today. And it's an ongoing argument, and I'm sure it's one you've all had, and it's certainly one I have almost every day. And it's so difficult because there's no real clear way to navigate it. Because both sides think they're right?
And there's an argument for both sides, and
yeah.
we heard the guys here speak about, there's a real need for addressable in occasion. I think the histamine example is a brilliant example, but that needs to sit as a part of a longer-term brand building strategy. If all you do is ever address, you never grow to become a big brand, and the fact that SMEs are using Facebook so heavily really shows that. They're in an early stage of their life, they're trying to address a very tight audience, but as they try and take that step to become a real, big, grown-up brand, at some point you have to say, I'm going to do something big and famous with mass reach, which doesn't immediately and obviously pay back.
Mm. And that's the reality of it. It's very easy. I mean, I've been in talks where people have stood up in similar places to this and told me there's only one way of doing things, and that's brand building. And I've been in similar places to this where people sit on stage and they go, well, that's great, but did you know programmatic can deliver the same results today? And I think that's all tremendous until you're there in practice, in which case it's a lot messier and a lot grayer. And so what we're going to talk you through now is our own experience, which was certainly the practice of this theory. And it started about almost 5 years ago, in 2014, when adam&eveDDB and the AA got together. And to be honest, it all looked pretty great. It looked great. We won the pitch. We won without a pitch. That was tremendous. That's always nice. It saves a few hairs and night's sleep. And it was also great because the AA looked to be an amazing brand, which they were on a lot of measures. They'd just been voted the UK's most trusted brand, which is extraordinary. They had 3.7 million members. And they were the biggest. Not only were they the most popular, they were the biggest. They had over 2,700 vans on the road, which meant they delivered a level of service that RAC or Green Flag or any of those guys cannot compete with. And so we thought, well, this is going to be easy. It's tremendous. We've got a brand people love, one that's basically a bona fide national treasure. And that's the easiest thing in the world to advertise and also write a advertising strategy for. It's just more of the same, please. And not only that, we had a little bit of digging, and we wheeled in Mr. Les Benet from wherever he was hiding. And the first thing he reported back was things look good, actually. In the short term, pretty bloody good. There were 6 years leading up to 2014 of continuous profit growth for the AA, which left them with a £92 million EBITDA. Literally no one is complaining when you have a £92 million EBITDA on a service brand in breakdown. That is not a problem. I mean, you were certainly hearing this side, right?
I was. I mean, this was done with a 40% increase in renewal prices, halving the marketing budget. I mean, this is the sort of stuff of dreams.
Yeah, I mean, that's what that looks like. That was the reason for this, is that when you look a bit further, it's because they weren't having to even pay, they thought, for brand building advertising. Such a strong brand, why would they need it? We'd cut that entirely by February 2014. And that's great. That's tremendous until you take another look at the figures. And that's where people like Les Benet come in handy, because that's all he does. And he took another look at the figures and suggested that the short-term profit, the short-term success we were seeing, was hiding another story.
So we were feeling like this in the business.
And really there was something like this going on. On the surface, brilliant, £92 million worth of EBITDA. Below the surface, all sorts of things were happening. What we noticed immediately from the slashing of media budgets and the reallocation towards brand building, we noticed that, well, our ad awareness had gone down, obviously, but that also worryingly meant that our brand awareness had gone down. So you had this brand, on the surface of it, one of the most loved brands in Britain, totally ubiquitous, leader in its category, that 1 in 10 people, 1 in 10 adults couldn't tell you what it was or what it did anymore. On top of that, we had a look at the search data. Now, it used to be, when you were a category leader, that you are often searched much, much more than the category generic. So if I'm looking for ketchup, you'll find that Heinz tomato ketchup is searched much, much more than ketchup in general. And that was always the case for the AA, but for the first time in its history, we were now drawing parity with the category generic of breakdown. We had been commodified, or commoditized. So that's worrying, and those are kind of the soft brand measures, and that was creating a sense of unease, regardless of commercial benefit. But then we had a look at the longer-term commercials of the brand, and that wasn't looking too good either. So we look at acquisition revenues. So these had dropped by a third since their peak 5 years previously. And of all the core products that were being sold, so breakdown products, we had dropped the amount we could charge for them by 20%. So our pricing power had gone down, and our volume had gone down. And that meant that overall revenue was tanking, and things weren't looking much better for renewal, right?
They weren't. I mean, the kind of horrifying picture was when you ran sort of that story forwards about 6 years, the business started to become quite untenable. And the way the business was dealing with this, to make sure we held up that wonderful profit number, was to really push forward on the renewal prices. So if we take this crocodile and turn it into a graph, this is a very famous graph in the business, which is described as the jaws. And this is the difference between the renewal price we were charging our customers and the amount we're charging customers at new business. And quite simply, the only way to shore up the profit we were tanking at new business was to increase renewal. Now this is fine, absolutely fine, if once a customer joins your business, you give them the most amazing experience and the most amazing brand immediately. We're a breakdown company, so the best will in the world, a lot of people don't break down, so I can't give them an amazing brand experience, I can't give them Netflix, I've got to give them an amazing brand. And at the same time as doing this, we're cutting all of our investment in brand. So their world is not being surrounded with amazing advertising about this amazing, famous, trusted brand.
And this was the chart that Cheryl mentioned. All of this amounted to a brand that people didn't want to stay at. And we had the projection that within 6 years we would reach a historic low in terms of membership, and that wouldn't be commercially tenable for the brand as a whole. And then we had this, as well as the jaws opened up, the vortex of death had opened up. So we were quite dramatic at the AA. It was quite refreshing to work with, which essentially meant that all of these things started meaning that we weren't going to be able to continue to run as a business. And we had to change what was being done with regards to comms. And I think it was an interesting thing. I think sometimes you come across these problems and nothing changes. But we were very lucky to, on both sides of the fence, have a very similar attitude to what was causing them and also what would solve them. And we genuinely believed that the only way to solve them was to stay true to the gospel and mantra of brand building. So you've probably all seen this chart, I assume, at one point or another. Our boy Les won't stop showing it to people. I think, essentially, it's a very simple and hopefully impactful way of representing the cumulative business effects of brand building. And we've all shown it to people. We've all been shown it, at least in my field. But it's one of the hardest things in the world to actually stick to, because those sharp, short spikes from activation, advertising, are incredibly addictive and incredibly seductive, and that's what you want. But that's what we were seeing with the AA. So we had to try something else. We had to learn to build value for the brand and not withdraw it, and also to maybe weather the slower uptake of sales to begin with. To get there, we had to execute 3 key strategic shifts. And they're pretty simple, but I'll take you through them very quickly. The first one, we had to redefine our audience. We had been ruthlessly focusing on wringing the value from our current members and targeting them very, very sharply with online digital display and ECRM to get more value out of them, to cross-sell them and upsell them. And we made a very pointed decision to broaden, to go from members to the masses, to go for fame, even to the point of it being inefficient, because we believed it would be more effective in the long term. We also redefined our media approach. Well, it had been slashed and it had been essentially all pushed onto activation media. And our decision was to raise it, or get some money back in there, and to try and get ourselves to a 60-40 balance. So 60% brand building, 40% DR, and then finally to redefine what we actually focus our messaging on, and where we had really spread our bets before. So we were advertising home insurance, home boiler repair, is that right?
Yeah, and home insurance at some point.
Car school, all that good stuff. And there was a decision made to focus on the jewel in the crown, the thing that really represented the brand, and that was breakdown. So those are our 3 key changes. And then what I'd like to be able to say is someone like me disappeared into a room and came out with a really brilliant idea, and Bob's your uncle, everything changed. And the truth is that didn't happen. Also, sign up to all those principles didn't happen immediately either. We went on a 3-year journey together. And in that 3-year journey, there were lots of small steps, and all of them were hard fought, whether it between Adam and Eve and the AA or internally at the AA. And I say largely that's the case because we've rarely had very animated discussions. And that was the reality of it. And I'll take you through those. I think what's interesting about it is not only is it a story of those steps being political, but it's also one of learning as well. I think on paper, we knew exactly the sort of advertising we should have been doing immediately. I think in practice, it takes a while to get out of old habits, to get out of the muscle memory, and also, frankly, to be brave enough to see through your ideas. So those 3 steps. First step looked a bit like this, which I'll play in a second. We went out the door with some brand advertising. Brilliant news, focused on breakdown, even better. It was probably a baby step into the world of emotional, famous communications, though. We were still pretty much focused on the capability of the brand, the practical nature of what the AA could offer. And also, we still were overspending massively in DR and in targeted digital display. So we saw some strong brand metric performance in year 1, but not as much commercial payback as we would have liked. But the ad looked like this.
cards.
Hi there.
Hello there. Yeah, I've lost my keys.
Okay.
Maybe they're under the car. No, nothing there.
Just got to take the wrong fuel out, put the new fuel in.
Great. Gets confusing.
I can imagine.
What do you reckon it is?
Hopefully it's the clutch, not a gearbox.
We get more people back on the road than anyone else.
Okay.
We are the Automobile Association. We are the AA.
So that was our first step. And then we had year 2, where we reran it with a slightly tweaked VO for legal reasons between a competitor, and also tightened up our approach to DR and pulled back some of the media money from targeted banners, etc., and pushed it out more into out-of-home in particular. There was a big spend, and TV, and commercial results started to improve. But it was only really until our third big step when things really took off, and that's when we really committed to emotion. That meant doing research, essentially, finding a new audience and working out what would appeal to them. And what we found was our new audience, which was like 40% of the driving public, weren't looking at breakdown the way that advertisers thought they were. They weren't damsels in distress, they weren't looking to be saved, and they were just incredibly busy and wanted their day not to be disrupted. And so we quickly moved the positioning of the AA from, no matter the situation, the AA can get you going again, very capability focused, to the AA will do whatever it takes to keep your show on the road. And then the hard bit came, because that was good, and we were all very happy with that, and it was a good meeting had by all. We had to work out how to execute it. And immediately we started writing scripts which sort of did the same thing as what we'd done before and explained why the AA is so great and how they did that. And that was the wrong thing for us to have done. The breakthrough came when we decided actually what we needed was an emotional sample of what that service felt like. And the advert we got to looked like this. That's where we got to. And to be honest, that's when things started really taking off. And what you're about to see is a lot of charts very, very quickly. So if you need to blink, I advise you do it now. Cheryl will take you through actually what the commercial impact of all of this amounted to.
Excuse the facetious nerd over there. This is the stuff that actually matters and is the reason that we're spending money with the media owners. So I will run through charts fairly quickly, but it's the stuff that matters to my business, and it means that investment continues. So advertising awareness picked up and then peaked as we ran with Baby. And we saw roadside acquisitions, so literally the amount of people who were buying membership of the AA increasing in line. This is phenomenal. That meant that our long-term trend in roadside acquisitions turned round. So for the first time in goodness knows how long, 6-7 years, we saw stabilisation and then growth in new business. And that meant that our total revenues for roadside began to grow. Our overall retention rate also stepped up. And now this is quite interesting because it'd be very easy to grow your acquisition and lose your retention rate by attracting a whole load of people who don't want to stay with you just by doing cheap deals. But no, we attracted people and they stayed. And that meant that our overall revenue grew, which clearly is what we're all here to do. And you can sort of see how that steps forward. And that meant that the AA revenue, the big number, the number that we report to the city that sustains our share price and sustains our investors, moved forward in a really material way. So net-net, the business started to be really, really pleased with what we'd done.
Yeah, and the point of all of this is not to, as it says, again, facetiously on the next slide, is not to say, we sort of told you so, that's how brand advertising works. The point of all of this is sort of a call to arms, really, which is the theory is easy, the practice is very, very difficult. And often looks unreasonable, this adherence to long-term brand building through mass reach campaigns. And there'll be 1,000 speeches on stages like this which suggest that you probably shouldn't do it, and you should look for the short-term payback. You should plow all of your money into Facebook. And that's kind of great, but I wouldn't bet on your brand becoming the number one in the category anytime soon, or on the long-term health of your brand, unless you look for that balance, and unless, as it says, you take a stand and you start to be really, really unreasonable. Thank you.